The T virus, Resident Evil. They called it just another corporate leak, a mishap in a lab, a containment breach. But when a virus doesn't just kill you, it reanimates you. It stops being a scandal and becomes a reckoning. The T virus wasn't born in nature. It didn't evolve in a bat cave or mutate in a subway. It was designed, carefully, deliberately, by the Umbrella Corporation, the most sinister pharmaceutical empire fiction has ever imagined. Originally intended as a bioweapon and a genetic enhancer, the virus didn't just turn heads in the military-industrial complex. It turned bodies into weapons. The moment it got out, through a ruptured vial, a disgruntled employee, maybe even by design, Raccoon City became patient zero for corporate apocalypse. What makes the T-virus outbreak so terrifying isn't just the infected, it's the scale of failure. Most zombie outbreaks come from some kind of ignorance or accident. But this was the result of profit-driven experimentation with complete disregard for humanity. That's the horror behind the horror. The infection spreads through bites, blood, and even the air once containment collapses. Victims die and reanimate within minutes, retaining just enough motor function to crawl, lurch, and bite their way through anything breathing. Standard stuff, right? But here's the twist. Umbrella didn't stop at zombies. While most outbreaks end when society collapses, the T-virus is just the beginning. It evolves on purpose. There's the G-virus, which turns people into regenerative, flesh-mutating monstrosities, Las Plagas parasites that puppet hosts like meat suits. Nemesis, a lab-grown juggernaut programmed to hunt with military precision. This isn't a virus. It's an arms race, and humanity is playing catch-up with monsters that were manufactured to win. Unlike other outbreaks, there's no mystery to solve here. We know who caused it. We know what it does. What's haunting is how predictable it all was. When you give godlike tools to corporations with no oversight, you don't get miracle cures. You get body bags. And the worst part? Raccoon City was just a test run. The rage virus, 28 days later. It didn't start with the dead. There was no bite, no slow decay, no shambling corpse crawling out of a grave. In 28 days later, the terror didn't reanimate, it accelerated. And that's what made it different. This outbreak begins with rage, bottled and enhanced in a lab, then released by well-meaning animal rights activists who had no idea what they were unleashing. The virus wasn't mystical or even corporate. It was an engineered strain of hemorrhagic fever designed to amplify aggression to its most violent, mindless extremes. And it worked too well. All it takes is one droplet of blood, saliva, or bodily fluid. One scream. And the world fell apart in hours. Victims turn in 10 to 20 seconds. That's not panic. It's an instant detonation. One infected in a crowded room isn't a problem to solve. It's a death sentence, a domino falling at terminal velocity. The infected don't rot because they're still alive. That's the twist. They're not undead. Their hearts beat. Their muscles surge. Their rage never sleeps. They sprint. They climb. They tear through glass, fire, and flesh without hesitation or fatigue. They don't feed. They don't strategize. They just obliterate. And unlike most zombies, which are defined by the slow breakdown of civilization, the rage virus flips the genre on its head. This isn't about society crumbling. It's about how fast it disappears. The military doesn't hold the line. It turns on civilians. Refugee camps become slaughterhouses. Fathers turn on daughters in seconds. Trust doesn't erode. It's ripped apart. Where Resident Evil is cold and calculated, 28 days later is a panic attack made viral. And the real horror isn't the infected, it's what the survivors become to survive. Because when rage is the disease, humanity is the first casualty. The virus train to Busan. It started with a leak, not on a train, but in a lab, of course. A chemical accident at a biotech facility that no one talked about until it was far too late. Because in Train to Busan, the science doesn't matter. The silence does. When the outbreak hits, it doesn't start with alarms or headlines. It starts with a twitching deer on a country road, a father distracted on a phone call, a train conductor who doesn't realize that the woman limping onto the last car is already turning. And within minutes, speed becomes the enemy. The virus in Train to Busan turns its victims in under a minute. Nervous systems hijacked, limbs snapping into unnatural angles, and a single bite triggering a chain reaction that spreads faster than fear. The infected move fast. They crash through glass. They contort and climb with insect-like spasms. And because they hunt using sight and sound, darkness becomes the survivors' only refuge. But only for a moment. Because when the lights come back on, they come back on running. But the real horror here, it isn't the zombies, it's the passengers. Train to Busan weaponizes confinement. A sleek, modern high-speed train turns into a steel coffin, 100 meters long, packed with strangers, no exits. You can't run, you can't hide, and you have no idea who's about to shove you into the teeth of death just to save themselves. Every car becomes a moral crucible. Who do you save? Who do you sacrifice? At what point does survival stop being survival and just become cruelty dressed up as logic? Unlike most outbreaks, this one doesn't need the globe to end. It just needs a few hundred people locked in a narrow corridor with nowhere to go and too much to lose. And as the infected pile up at the glass, snarling, it becomes clear. The virus spreads fast, but selfishness spreads faster. Cordyceps brain infection. The Last of Us. They say nature heals, but in The Last of Us, nature hunts. The cordyceps brain infection didn't come from a lab or a test tube. It wasn't a mistake, it was evolution. A mutated fungus, once limited to insects, adapted to human hosts as global temperatures rose. Climate change gave it the conditions to leap species. The result? A pandemic that didn't just infect bodies, it rewired them. Once inside, cordyceps hijacks the brain. Victims stay alive, barely, while the fungus puppeteers their motor functions, driving them to attack and spread spores. The infection unfolds in horrific stages. Runners, then stalkers, then the blind, echolocating clickers, and finally, armoured bloaters. No bite kills instantly, but it guarantees transformation. It spreads through bites and airborne spores, and once cities fall, even the ground becomes a threat. Underground tendrils connect infected like a hive, disturb one, and a horde awakens elsewhere. You're never just fighting one enemy, you're fighting the whole ecosystem. There's no cure, no miracle lab, no reset button. Survival means adapting, trusting no one, taking what you can. In this world, the apocalypse didn't erupt overnight. It grew quietly beneath our feet until the world above collapsed into ruin. The Solanum virus, World War Z. It started quietly. A single case, then a dozen, then thousands. In World War Z, the virus known as Solanum turns the dead into weapons of mass infection. It spreads through bites, kills within minutes, and reanimates bodies with enhanced aggression and zero hesitation. Victims don't stumble, they sprint, pile, and crush anything in their way. Unlike most outbreaks, this one goes global in days. Borders fail, governments collapse, and in a world connected by air travel and misinformation, the infection spreads faster than the truth. Entire continents fall before anyone agrees on what they're even facing. The zombies behave like a virus in physical form. Fast, overwhelming, and single-minded. In the film, they scale walls by sheer force of numbers. In the novel, they drown cities in silence. Either way, it's not just fear, it's math. And then comes the twist. The virus doesn't attack everyone. It avoids the terminally ill, people too weak to be viable hosts. That small detail becomes the key to survival. Some start self-infecting with curable diseases to avoid detection. It's the bleakest cure imaginable. Stay alive by becoming just sick enough. In the end, the only way humanity fights back is with strategy, sacrifice, and a total abandonment of idealism. World War Z isn't just about survival. It's about how far you're willing to fall to win. Wildfire, virus. The Walking Dead. In The Walking Dead, the virus has no origin story. No villain, no cure, just certainty. Referred to as wildfire, this infection doesn't spread. It waits. Everyone's already carrying it. The moment you die, no matter the cause, you turn. A walker's bite isn't transmission, it's a death sentence. The virus was always there and now it's the rule. Walkers aren't fast or smart, but they're relentless. They swarm by sound and smell, move in packs and break defenses over time. The real threat isn't the bite, it's that you're always outnumbered. One scream in the wrong place and you're buried in a tide of the dead. What makes this outbreak different is the psychological weight. Survivors aren't just fighting zombies, they're fighting each other. Trust becomes a liability. Morality becomes a weakness. Communities rise and fall on nothing but rumor and fear. There's no government, no system, just scattered groups doing whatever it takes to stay alive. In the end, The Walking Dead isn't about the virus at all. It's about what happens after the end starts and never stops.